Welcome to the Gus Alva Perspective, a videocast that embraces gratitude and abundance over the mindset of fear and scarcity. It's important that we tackle some of the salient issues that assail us all at the present time. The topic that I'd like to touch on today is one of learned helplessness. It's a very important psychological construct because this concept of learned helplessness is one that profoundly impacts an individual's perception of control, motivation, and overall well being. So let's tune into what exactly this is. Learned helplessness is a psychological phenomenon where someone learns to believe that they have no control over their circumstances. This leads to a state of passivity and resignation. And this is one thing that I've been seeing a fair amount of in my clinical practice recently. And so I just thought that it might not be a bad idea to revisit, again, some of the history that we have associated with this. This concept of learned helplessness was initially studied by a psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman. He did some interesting experiments in the 1960s, and he and his colleagues exposed dogs to electric shocks. It may sound barbaric, but follow me with this. Some of the dogs were given the ability to escape the shocks by jumping over a barrier, while others had no control over the shocks and couldn't escape. Later, when all the dogs were placed in a situation where they could escape the shocks by jumping over the barrier, the dogs that had previously been unable to escape didn't attempt to do so. And even though they had the ability to avoid the shocks, this led to this state of learned helplessness. In these experiments, animals were experiencing repeated and uncontrollable negative events. And unfortunately, this learned helpless response evoked a sense of powerlessness, even when opportunities for escape or control were presented. Now, why state that? Well, this is a condition that can also occur in humans, not just canines. And this oftentimes stems from either traumatic experiences, chronic adversity, or repeated failure. Now, we see historically multiple examples of where this has happened, and there are tragic instances in our history, collectively, worldwide, where individuals that are consistently perceiving that their efforts to change or improve their situation are futile, that they then develop a belief that they are helpless and that their actions will have no impact on the outcome. This obviously is demoralizing and can lead towards a reduction in motivation, increased vulnerability, depression, and impaired problem-solving abilities. Well, the good news with this is that learned helplessness is not a permanent condition. And with appropriate interventions, individuals can regain a sense of control and also overcome that learned helplessness. Therapy, cognitive restructuring techniques, and building self-efficacy are among the strategies that are oftentimes utilized to help people break free from the cycle of helplessness and regain a belief in their ability to influence their circumstances. Now, stating this is a very important point because when people are hearing constant negativity and the entire amount of information that flows to someone is, again, just outrage after outrage, people hop into this learned helpless mode. They feel like they can't really do much of anything. But think about this. We can do a lot of things. We can do a lot by espousing an appropriate education and appropriate dissemination of our values to others. And again, it doesn't mean that having a differing thought from someone else is something that shouldn't be tolerated. Quite the contrary, it should be embraced. But having an open dialogue about things that make us feel futile or make us feel helpless are very important. Learned helplessness and another concept, passive nihilism, describes psychological states that impact an individual's outlook as well as behavior. And so the important thing here is that, we can, through appropriate interaction, appropriate communication, appropriate education, look at ways of empowering ourselves from whatever construct it is that we are seeing and we are facing, and that we feel like there's a sense of futility over being able to do anything. Um, I see this a fair amount, and it unfortunately is being played out dramatically um, in the current state of affairs within our communities. Ultimately, people just feel like they can only just throw their hands up in the air and just allow things to kind of continue down the path in which they are, not knowing that they in turn can have a great degree of impact and voice and evoke specific changes and not only resist, but maybe also fight back against some of the concepts that they might not necessarily be in agreement with. Part of the beauty about living in the society in which we do, particularly in the US, is that we have those liberties, we have those opportunities to be able to seek out attention, to seek out help, to seek out counseling, to seek out additional advice, to seek out additional reference points, and then subsequently work on taking a look at the areas where we may be far more powerful than how we feel. And so, if one has been led to a particular point in which their perception of control and motivation and overall well being has deteriorated, well, the first thing to do is to question, why is it that we're experiencing this? And then subsequently take a look at the true construct of what's going on, and then to take a look at either advocacy or activation of different things that we're all capable of doing, and being able to voice differences, opinions, but also positive change, and keeping in mind, again, that abundance and gratitude model where we're edifying others as we edify ourselves. I thank you for joining us right now on this whole point of learned helplessness, since it is a theme that unfortunately abounds to a great degree at the present time. Thank you for joining us.